This is Falcon Bobby 2.0, my newly built model rocket seconds after its first flight attempt. But you've read the title and you know that it didn't quite go to plan. In this video I'm going to quickly go over what went wrong during this flight, along with a bit of the stuff leading up to it and what's going to happen now. Welcome, my name is George, and Falcon Bobby 2.0 has been a model rocket that I've been working on over the last few months. I've got a whole separate video on this channel discussing most of the actual development of this rocket. I don't know, I can't remember. But for now, let me talk to you about the struggle of actually trying to find a damn place to launch this thing. It was Saturday the 14th of July. Me, my dad, along with a couple of my friends, including Alex, or Telly1, packed up the rocket and all the equipment that came with it and drove to the first launch site we picked.
George, can you tell me about where we're going?
We're going to the launch site.
Yeah, but what about the launch site makes it appropriate?
It's a bog. Well, not really, but it's not all bog.
Bog.
Yeah.
Are you going to launch the rocket again if it goes well?
Probably not, no.
Oh.
I don't want to risk it.
And so, what's the total amount of time? Like, when did you start on this?
February.
Alright, so...
It's 5 months. 5 months. Once we had gotten there, we began to set up. However, whether it was fortune or not, a lady walking on a nearby road informed my dad that the person living nearby was actually a member of the police force. Apparently he was a chief or something.
Wait, the person who owns this land is the guard.
Oh, better be quick then.
We didn't know whether or not he actually owned the land, so we decided it would be best to at least ask for permission. Sadly, and rather understandably, he didn't feel very comfortable and told us not to. We packed back up and looked around for another place to launch nearby. But it was getting late, and so we had to call off our first actual attempt and headed back. Me and my dad struggled over the next week or so to figure out where else we could possibly launch it. In Ireland, where we live, most of the land is owned by somebody. We tried multiple times to contact the council and the IAA to see if we could use the nearby private airport for launching the rocket, but they never gave us a straight answer back and just said, we'll transfer you to the right department or whatever. However, there was a wind farm near the first place that we tried to launch last time. It was open to the public and was pretty flat and open. The rocket wasn't expected to go high or fast enough to pose any significant risk to the wind turbines. So on July 27th, we set out again for the second attempt. Alex, my good friend, set up his tracking camera far off from the rocket. I set up a couple nearby cameras. My dad had his own camera nearby, a cool slow motion camera, and an onboard camera. And after waiting a good while for everybody out for a walk with their dogs to clear off, we were ready for launch. Okay, not great, but what went wrong here? Well, it's pretty obvious. Only one motor actually fired up, and the other two just took a nap. The thing that surprised me the most, however, was just how fast the rocket still ascended, even under the power of one motor. Before I thought 3 motors was the bare minimum to get this thing off the ground, but it looked like it was working pretty well with just one lit up. The only thing stopping the rocket from going any further was the fact that it was still connected to the launch controller wire because the other motors didn't light. This did unfortunately cause a problem. If you look closely when the rocket is at its highest, some of the wires disconnected from the motors and flung underneath the exhaust of the motor as it spun around. Those motors can burn as hot as 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit and could easily burn through those rubber wires. And it may have just done that. These were the wires after a quick inspection. It could just be some soot and might not have actually burnt through the wire, but we're definitely going to have to do some testing before our next attempt. After the motor burned out, the rocket slid back down the launch rod and hit the pad quite hard, causing some minor damage on the pad, but still quite repairable. After some post-flight inspection, it was confirmed that not only did 2 of the motors not light, but neither did the igniters themselves. These are what they look like if they did actually light up. My worry is that the launch controller might not have actually sent enough current to the motors to actually sufficiently light them up, but would have still burnt the igniters and used them up, if that makes sense. But in fact, they didn't actually light at all. which is a good and a bad thing. The good thing is that I can still use the 2 unused motors without any issue because they didn't light up at all, so there would have been no damage done to them. However, the bad thing is the reason they didn't actually light up in the first place. I suspect that in combination with the wind moving the rocket a bunch on the pad, and the fact that we had to wait about half an hour for everyone to clear out, caused the nichrome wires on the igniters to tangle and touch each other, which may have shorted them out at ignition, causing no current to reach 2 of the motors. So what did we come out with this failure? Well, the first thing is that I really regret using a cluster of motors. I've never used more than 1 motor on a rocket before, and it adds a whole new level of complexity when we're setting it up to launch it, and possibly for not much benefit at all, because the rockets seem to have done fine with just 1 of the motors lit up. I haven't made the final decision yet, but we might resort to just using 1 slightly more powerful motor for the next attempt. The only couple of things that are making this into a bit of a dilemma is the fact that it took a lot of effort to make the 3D printed motor cluster, and you'll see why if you watch the development video. If I just did 1 motor, I would have to completely remove the 3D printed case and probably destroy it in the process, unless there's some way to get rid of epoxy after it's set. The second reason is that getting a motor more powerful than the D-class motors that I already use is quite tricky and expensive for where I live. The best thing I can do now is just to make sure that the wiring is better next time. However, there is a thing called tape match ignition tape. This was mentioned to me in the comments of one of my latest videos, so thank you about that. They seem to be used for Kilma motors, which are slightly different to Estes motors, which I've been using before. However, they're both bipropellant motors, and I've heard that they can be used both ways, but I'll just have to do more research. I'm not sure exactly when the next launch attempt will be. I'm hoping it doesn't take more than just a few weeks to get everything sorted out, but at the end of the day, it's rocketry. Things take time, things go wrong, and you can't have success without failure. Thank you all so much for your kind and very helpful support on this project so far, and just thanks for joining me in general, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider leaving a like, that would also be greatly appreciated, and if this sort of stuff interests you, then you know what to do. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.